Happiest. You're listening to the Happiest Girl in the Room podcast. Hey. Welcome back to the Happiest Girl in the Room podcast, also known as the Happiest Diaries. Allow me to introduce myself to first-time listeners. My name is Ayadilia Lapi, and I am the happiest girl in the room. Okay, what I mean by that is I am the author of the book titled Happiest Girl in the Room. And right now, you are listening to my podcast, Happiest Diaries, which is essentially an evolution of my book. So here, I share my real-life experiences, people's real-life experiences, hinged on the Word of God to inspire joy and happiness for daily living. And sometimes I take parts of my book and I read about it, then speak about it. That's what I do here, and I hope that with every listen, I do share a lesson or a word that would inspire someone. Thank you. So let's get into today's conversation. Sometime last month was June 23rd, which commemorated International Widows Day. And I was invited by an NGO focused on caring for widows and orphan children to come speak about my experience as a young widow in present-day Nigeria. So, two things, came out of that experience for me. It was a very humbling experience, but two things struck me while I was there. The first one was certainly the stories that were being shared by the widows. I listened to women who had struggled with societal norms, women who had their rights trampled upon as soon as they lost their husbands, women who were stripped of everything that they owned because the man of the house was just no longer there. And, it broke my heart to hear such stories. I started to count myself lucky, is it because, I was young when the tragedy happened to me, and, at that time we literally just started our life, and so it's not like we had built anything of worth that anybody could take from me, so to speak. And I was just thinking that these stories could have been mine. So it was just so depressing to listen to those type of real life experiences. These are women who had lived an eternity with their husbands only for it to mean nothing because he had passed. Women, they're sharing their stories that, upon their husband's passing, their family had mentioned that their marriage was no longer recognized by law because they did a customary wedding. Something that they did not tell the man when he was alive. Now he's gone, they're telling the wife that she was not a real wife because their wedding, doesn't count. There were so many others who had their family stripped from them their life's work because they believed it's owned by their brother, so he has to be passed on to them. A woman has no right to own anything, etc. And the one that even surprised me the most was a woman who shared a story that she was transferred to, she was married off to one of the members of her husband's family because they saw her as a property. My God, such horror stories. And as depressing as it was to hear that, and as I tried to unpack a lot from all those stories, I think the biggest thing that came out for me, the loudest, was gender inequality. Is gender inequality. Everything in those stories had that underlying theme of gender inequality. And then, it occurred to me, we were there marking International Widows Day, and I'm like, okay, even the United Nations agree that it's women that bear the negative brunt of the loss of a spouse. Because why is the day in itself called International Widows Day? What's wrong with International Widowhood Day? I didn't know widowers. But no, it's only women who are stigmatized by the devastating loss of a partner. It's only women who enter a long-term fight for their basic rights and dignity just because they've lost a spouse. They are denied their inheritance. they have their property taken from them, and all sorts of things just happen to them. These are people who have just been left devastated by the loss of their loved one. Imagine you're having to deal with grief, which is painfully gruesome, by the way, and then you're now having to face all of this societal trauma. This sort of thing will just magnify the pain, honestly. And then later, some people argue with me that women are not being marginalized, and this fight for gender equality is a misplaced one. Please, if you ever think that, you're thinking from a place of privilege. I tell you, widows, women have historically been left unseen, unsupported everywhere, and that's why it's always critical. It's always important that we speak up for underrepresented groups. If you know a group that is underrepresented, you need to speak up for them. You need to show genuine concern and care by removing harmful traditions that stigmatize widowhood. And even, what's wrong with creating policies that would empower widows? The thing is, we're so accustomed to the horrible things that happen around us that we have become so desensitized. We've become so insensitive to the effects that they have on people's lives. I'm going to try and paint a picture. A typical family is a 2-parental household, right? And then one tragically passes. It becomes a lone parental household. So because men are, typically more economically empowered, they don't necessarily struggle when, their wife dies. They don't struggle as the women would, as an average woman would. Yeah, because women, face this societal traditions that make them particularly vulnerable to poverty. And that's the picture I wanted you to see in your mind. That's why it's called International Widows Day and not Widow Day. So as a society, we need to do better. We must begin to put ourselves in the shoes of these people and show empathy. Because as a man, why would you be taking over your brother's property and throwing out his wife and his children? Like, why? How would you feel if something happens to you and then somebody does that to your wife and kids? Think about it. As government, what is the government doing to safeguard and advance the rights of widows? I actually learned about what Governor Wike did when he was governor of Rivers State. I learned that in that room. I learned that he created this widows empowerment policy that protected the rights of widows and removed these harmful practices. I also heard that he signed into law women inheritance rights that's actually stopped the exclusion of female children from inheriting their father's property, and also curbing the discrimination against widows so that they are no longer excluded from participating in sharing of their dead husband's assets. And I really, really commend him. But government must take this action on federal level so that they become universal. And for us as individuals, what role are we playing? What role are we playing in advancing the rights of the underrepresented? Because it boils down to us, really. I'm not even saying widows alone. What role are you doing in helping these groups? And to everyone whose rights are being trampled upon, you need to stop allowing it, really. You need to seek help. There was a lawyer on the panel, and she works for Lagos State Government, Lagos State Ministry of Justice, to be precise. She's also a widow, and she's made it her life's work to passionately fight for widows' rights. Now I know that there's a Ministry of Justice in Lagos State with an office dedicated to fighting for the rights of widows. So whatever the case is, whatever the issue is, I'm sure that if you seek help, you will find it. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about from the events I went for on July 23rd. The second thing is the issue of labels. So that experience really reminded me of the issue of labels. I remember when I was being introduced in the room as a young widow. Oh my goodness, I cringed. I'm like, no, who are they introducing? It can't be me. It just cannot be me. If you read my book, you would realize that I struggle with accepting that tag, widow. And I mean no disrespect to widows at all. It's just, I personally absolutely detest labels. I've always hated labels since forever. I just feel like label is the way people put you in a box to oppress you. So it's okay if you want to label yourself, that's you, but nobody has the right to label anyone. I just feel it's oppressive and it's a form of bullying. So that's why I've never really liked labels. And here with society putting me in a box, no. It was now like a sad one, a word that's synonymous with so much sadness. So I didn't like it at all. In fact, talk about awkward when people, know that you're married. Well, people automatically assume that you're married. For example, I talk about my kids a lot. So if you talk to me for maybe 5 minutes or more, there's a tendency that I'll bring up my kids, and then you just automatically assume that I'm married, and then you ask me, oh, what does your husband do? Who's your husband? Blah blah blah. And then I answer, oh, he passed some time ago. The conversation will automatically just go south. You start hearing things like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're so strong. That's the one that's always, amusing to me. You're so strong. You don't act like a widow. You don't look like a widow. You don't sound like a widow. Then I begin to wonder, how a widow is supposed to act. Like, yes, these are people that have experienced huge tragedy, but should that really define our lives forever? So how is a widow supposed to look? How is she supposed to sound? How is she supposed to act? I know people that say those things. They say it from a good place. They always mean well, but it just comes across as amusing and odd. And yeah, I remember there was a time I was speaking with my boss, and she just mentioned something about her husband did something, and then immediately she paused and she told me, oh, I really hope you don't feel some type of way because I mentioned my husband. And I'm like, no, I'm well. I'm fine. I'm very fine. I don't want people to be sensitive around me because they feel that I will feel a type of way. No, not at all. I think it's sweet that people are that sensitive, but because of this particular label, no, I don't want you to think you have to walk on eggshells around me because of this. And I told her that, and that's why in chapter 7 of my book, where I shared on the lessons that the lessons that grief taught me, I wrote that one of them was grief can be performative, because the word widow is seen as such a sad negative thing. People just expect you to act or move a certain type of way for the rest of your life. Yeah. It's not even realistic. And that means you don't want the person to even heal. So don't make that mistake and fall for it, because if you do, then you're letting a label define you. I used an example that was trending just recently. Popular musician Davido and his wife Chema, they got married, and I was scrolling through the comment section of one of the blogs that reported it, and I saw comments like, oh, isn't she the one who lost her son? How is she so happy? And I was like, hey, world people, like, is she supposed to stay miserable forever? No, come on. The truth is, no one can hurt for her the way she was hurt when what happened. But is she supposed to stay in that hurt forever? So even if she's experienced a thing of joy, she should act miserable because this happened to her sometime, so she has to always act that way. Yeah, and that's exactly what a label does. It tries to turn you into a performer So when people hear widow, they would expect that you need to appear sad, you need to appear somber all the time. No. Just forget that you're a living, breathing person, that you grow, you heal, you're trying to move forward with your life no matter how difficult it is. Yeah. That's it. And that's why I always say that you shouldn't let grief or whatever challenges you're going through, shouldn't let it turn you into something, like turn you into a forever grouch. Yeah, you don't have to act sad because you think that that's what people expect of you. You need to free yourself from societal shackles, because one occurrence in your life, no matter how huge it is, how heavy or how terrible it may be, it shouldn't define you forever, because the truth is that is not your full story. Being a widow means your spouse passed, but it doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. So whatever it is that you may be going through, whatever it is, as tough as it may be, maybe you're trying to conceive, maybe you lost a job, you need a new job, you've been passed on for promotion so many times. Maybe it's your husband is not husbanding, or your wife is not wifing, whatever it is. I get it, it's tough, it's terrible, it's not your fault, but you shouldn't let it become your personality. That's it. Yes, what happens to us is not our fault, but how we respond or how we react to it is entirely up to us. So your label and your identity is whatever you decide it is. So the parts of you, everyone struggles with something. So the parts of you that you struggle with should not now take over your entire personality, shouldn't overshadow the other parts of you that are so great. You shouldn't, confine yourself into a box, and, a box of or a label, societal labels that don't tell your entire story. So what are those circumstances that are beyond your control that you're letting to take over your identity? It's time to take control of your story. It's your life, it's your story. And as the scripture says in 1 Corinthians 15:10, I am what I am by the grace of God. Meaning, what that means is that I can be anything I want to be by the grace of God. You get? So if God has given us that grace to be anything, why would you choose to be a label? You should choose to be awesome instead, right? So yeah, that's it. Thank you. That's my message for today. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please remember to drop a comment, like, share with your friends and loved ones. You never know who might need this. And before you go, I'll read a page of my book as usual. So don't press that log out button yet. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening, rather. Cheers. Bye-bye. You're listening to the Happiest Girl in the Room podcast. See, the easiest way to forgiveness is to make excuses for people. When your support systems disappoint you, don't sulk on forever and cancel them. The cancel culture is really wild now, by the way. Instead, try making excuses for their shortcomings. This saves you the headache of possible disappointment and harboring negative emotions for people who don't owe you anything anyway. Making excuses for people will facilitate the forgiveness process. It also helps you turn around the negative emotions you harbored for people who you feel betrayed you when, by default, you expected some measure of love and loyalty. Let me explain. Some of the most meaningful relationships I thought I had were with members of Oluwaseye's family. I thought we were quite close. They were always making me feel like I was truly part of the family, and I never got the awkward in-law vibes from any of them. However, when Oluwasheye passed, I wasn't prepared for how that loving relationship turned sour, and so quickly too. I won't lie, it hurt me deeply to see people I called family treat me like an outsider. I expected love and empathy, but I can't say that's what I received following Oluwasheye's passing. Good thing is, I think we've moved past that now. How? I was able to convince myself that how they made me feel was an expression of their pain. It was quite tough, but eventually, I got it. I'm not saying it was okay, because it's not, but I got it.
Thank you for listening to the Happiest podcast. See you next